This season, Instacart has your back to school. As in, they've got your back to school lunch favorites, like snack packs and fresh fruit. And they've got your back to school supplies, like backpacks, binders, and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually tells you they have a huge school project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So first call your parents to say I'm sorry, and then download the Instacart app to get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get a $0 delivery fee for your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 per order. Additional terms apply.
When you pick up some scratches, cause you want a fun break, the playful way you scratch is the next choice you should make. You can make your dog's leg kick and scratch with that. You could even grab a laser pointer and use your cat. You can build yourself a homemade scratching machine, or use a piece from your chess set. Go ahead, grab the queen. Scratch like a DJ with your record player. A cactus could scratch off that scratchable layer. Cause when it comes to scratching, there's a million playful ways. Thanks to scratchers from the California Lottery, a little play can make your day.
Please play responsibly. Must be 18 years or older to purchase, play, or claim.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
New activation and upfront payment for 3-month plan required. Taxes and fees extra. Additional restrictions apply. See mintmobile.com for full terms.
Expressing your love can look many different ways. And with the right jewelry gift from Blue Nile, it can truly sparkle. Blue Nile's collection of classic diamond jewelry makes for the kind of gift that speaks volumes without saying a single word. Or switch things up with a sapphire piece sure to spark conversation. Either way, Blue Nile's Diamond Guarantee ensures you get the highest quality at the best price. Express yourself with Blue Nile, the original online jeweler, at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
Somebody please think of the children!
And welcome back to Little Cuts, our weekly mini-sode where we dig into things that we've been watching and or playing recently. I'm Terry.
And reading! And I'm Mary Beth.
And reading!
I learned how to read! Anyway, this week we are chatting about things that go bump in the night, the worst 911 operator, a fever dream of a novel, an epic sci-fi series, a coming-of-age ghost story, a cute YA adaptation, and a love letter to Japanese TV.
Aw.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Is that how you feel?
Someone has thoughts.
I know. She's got a lot of thoughts and feelings about the media I've been consuming. Anyway.
I mean, that makes perfect sense. So, wait, before we do talk about all the stuff we have been consuming recently, it is a new month. It's Pride. We have new Patreon stuff coming your way, including our Fresh Wounds episode, which we're going to record this weekend. And is going to be about what, Mary Beth?
Inside. Get ready for DIY C-sections.
Spoiler alert.
Well, if you don't know by now, now you do. So that's fine. I feel like most of our listeners know what it is because we've curated that kind of listenership, and I love that for us.
I do love that for us.
We'll also have a new seltzer up shortly. We lost track of time because time is fake.
I don't think May has actually ended yet. Like I don't think it has.
I don't either. My noodle is blown that it is today when we're recording this is June 1st and it is fucking June. But yeah, support your local gay podcasters and support us on Patreon.
Instead of
throw a coin to your gay podcasters.
Instead of people that use Pride to talk about queerness and then don't talk about it for the rest of the year. You know who you are.
Well, we're gay. 24/7, 365, baby.
We sure are. Except for that one time where I accidentally came out as straight on that episode.
Oh, yeah. I do remember that. What a ride. What a ride.
I tell you. All right. I want to hear about things that go bump in the night.
So things that go bump in the night. This is The Boogeyman, which is now in theaters, directed by Rob Savage of Host fame.
And Dashcam.
I am in the... Well, that's what I didn't say that for a reason, but okay. Former guest of the show as well, Rob Savage. But I'm gonna be brief about this one because I am in the minority, and then I did not really enjoy this movie very much. A lot of people have, but this is one of my all-time favorite Stephen King short stories, and it is a very short short story. It is
on the podcast.
Yeah, so it's 10 pages long. It's really short, and I was very interested to see how they were going to adapt it, and I'm just like not very impressed with how they adapted it. There's some pretty good jump scares, and like there's some really interesting shots. I think like, you know, Rob is really good at framing scares.
He really is.
And building to scares. And so I definitely respect that. I just think it was so much. It's like aping so much from Smile and like these trauma narratives we keep seeing in horror. And like, so Beck and Woods wrote the script, and it's not strong. It feels very cookie cutter. It's very one dimensional. It's very kind of like boring to me personally. So, I mean, and you know, it's PG-13. I think it does some good scares, even as PG-13. Like, it's not the rating, I think, that affects it. I think it's just like, it feels a little bit lazy in terms of a trauma narrative. And it's just like, I'm getting sick of it. I'm getting really bored of it. Yeah. As someone who is incredibly traumatized, figure out, like, it's not that hard to do a good story about trauma, but I feel like people are not understanding what resonates about trauma horror. They're just seeing, like, the kind of, like, baseline or, like, upper level of what that looks like instead of really understanding what they're trying to do. And that's what this movie is. It's someone who, like, watched The Babadook and was like, I could do that. And they didn't really understand what made The Babadook scary and like affecting, and yeah. So
I saw Matt Monagle posting today about it, and he did not like it either. But I think he and you kind of clued in on the same issue, is that we're like the tail end of like trauma being like the go-to horror thing for a very long time, it seems like at this point. And I think we're at the tail end of that, and I don't think there's anything else to really mine from it. And so it just feels kind of, like you said, cookie cutter.
Yes, exactly. And, you know, I think a lot of people have liked it, and that's all. And I'm glad. Like, I'm glad that it'll probably do well in theaters. I think it's, like, definitely has good jump scares, but it just reminds me very much of, like, mid to late 2000s theatrical runs of, like, horror movies that were very mid. Gave me those vibes very much. Okay. So, that's me. I know we don't usually shit on movies here, but I feel like that movie is a big enough release that I don't think my one bad review is going to, like, put it in the toilet, because a lot of people have liked it, and so I don't ever feel as bad shitting on a wider release than an indie. Only because, like, it's not as big of a deal. But yeah, so, I mean, like, a lot of you might enjoy it, so, I don't know.
I'm debating whether
don't go in expecting anything like the story.
Yeah.
It just, like, there's so much in the story that has a lot to do with, like, toxic masculinity and have you read it?
I have not.
Story?
Okay. I'm not a huge short story fan, or I have historically not been a huge short story fan. So I've that is like one area of King that I've read a few, but like it's not something that I go look for. And that was that in Nightmares and Dreamscapes? Was it in that one?
Night Shift.
Okay.
Night Shift.
Yeah, I've never read Night Shift.
Yeah. So Night Shift is like my favorite one, but I also read that when I was really young, and I kind of like imprinted on it. Especially because I read the Boogeyman when I think I was like 10, and that really fucked me up. But like, it's just such a dense, but it's like thematically really dense if like you're reading it from like, you know, a pretty analytical lens in terms of like masculinity, toxic masculinity, how fathers think of, like, it's like very King, but it could have been really cool taking that into like a 2023 context, but instead they made a cookie cutter, like, kids in peril with a monster kind of movie. And it's like boring. It's just like the most boring route you could have fucking taken it. Like, there's just like no originality. Anyway, I'm gonna stop now. I'm getting mean. But yeah, that's The Boogeyman, out today in theaters if you so wish to see it. I want to hear about the worst 911 operator. Because when you wrote this in our notes, I cackled like a hyena because it caught me off guard. Because it's just a funny thing to read out of context.
I got my start reviewing video games, but I haven't really reviewed
Cool.
video games much recently. One night I was like, I really want to try to review this upcoming game that's coming out. And so I went through, I don't even know how I came across this website it's for press of video games, and it has like a bunch of indie games, and this was one of them that they were putting keys out there for. And so I requested one and I got one. And so I've been playing Killer Frequency since last week. And it is out as of the recording of this. So if you're listening to this, it's out. And it is out on everything. Steam, Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, Meta Quest 2. So like if you have any of those, this is out to play on. And it takes place in 1987, I want to say. And you are a radio DJ that used to broadcast out of Chicago and have millions of listeners every night. And something happened and you have been relegated to the small town of Gallows Creek, where your listenership went from millions to like dozens. And you are the late night shift DJ at this small town radio station in the 80s.
Nothing has ever gone wrong in a small town radio station on the late shift. Nothing has ever gone wrong.
That is definitely not a horror show at all. And so it's you and your producer Peggy, and you see her like in the room across from you, and it's sort of like fuzzied like a producer's mirror almost, and she's kind of showing you the ropes of how to maneuver playing the singles on the record player, playing ads on your cassette tape, answering calls, changing the volume up and down. Like it feels kind of like a workplace simulator in some regard. But then you get a phone call from the 911 dispatch operator, who is panicked and saying that that Sheriff Matthews, the sheriff in town, has been killed. Some urban legend of the Whistling Man, who was this killer from the 50s who died, quote unquote, under like mysterious circumstances, and you know him by he whistles, and so like there's this high-pitched whistling sound as he's like stalking his prey. And he killed the sheriff. She's unable to get any calls out to neighboring police stations. The phone lines are all dead, and so the very first thing you have to do is basically help her get out of the police station into a car and leaving. And so you have to like provide suggestions that, you know, us horror fans are always screaming at the screen like, do this, you need to grab this, you need to do that. And I got her out of safety, and she went and she's like, okay, now I'm transferring all the 911 calls to your radio station, and you're going to field calls because I'm the dispatcher and I'm going to...
No, that's not how this works. No.
And so we spend the rest of the night...
I just love that. You're like, fuck, no, that's not what I asked.
He's like, excuse me, what are you doing? She's like, someone needs to do it. You are a radio person. You know how to talk to people. I need you to field the calls while I go bring the cavalry from the nearby town, and it's going to take me 4 hours to get there and back. So have fun.
Oh my god.
And so then it's like you trying to play your music. People are calling in for singles to play. There are like weird characters that call in. One person is trying to constantly promote his pizza store. And so he like calls in constantly. And then you're also fielding calls with people that are being chased by the Whistling Man, and you have to use a variety of things to help them out of the predicament. So it has kind of an escape room type vibe to it. Like one part you have a magazine that has like, that talks about how to hotwire a car. I don't know why this isn't a magazine, but you know, it's a game. And so you're using that, and you're basically trying to talk this woman through hotwiring her car because she ran from the killer and dropped her keys, and now she's in her car and she can't get out, and the Whistling Man is coming for her. So you basically have to like help her.
I'm stressed just hearing about this.
You have to help her like learn how to hotwire the car and get out of there. People can die. I killed more people than I care to admit on my playthrough. Which is why this is about the worst 911 dispatch operator, because I was not good at saving a lot of people. Yes. But it's fun. It's a little cheesy. It's a little silly. There's a little bit of ludonarrative dissonance in it because, like, the actual solving
Okay.
puzzles don't have any time limits on it. So it feels like the killer's just sort of like waiting for you to get things done. So there's like a little bit of that kind of silliness to it that is inherent with playing the game. But it's a fun story. It has a couple of good twists and turns, some fun music in it, and really good voice acting. The voice acting reminded me of
Ooh.
Firewatch. Is that what it was called?
Oh, okay.
Did we talk about this game before, Firewatch? Have you played?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought we talked about it at one point.
Mm-hmm. We've talked about it before, yeah.
Yeah. So it has kind of like that same quality of voice acting, and it's fun, and it's available pretty much everywhere you want to play games at. So I recommend this one. This one was a good one.
Is it on Switch?
It is. It's on Switch,
Sweet.
PlayStation, Xbox, Steam, MetaQuest 2, everywhere that you can probably play a game. It's out.
It sounds fun.
It is fun.
And stressful as fuck. But, like, did you ever play Papers, Please?
Yes.
So I know it's not the same, but I love games that are, like, you have one person that you're, like, working. It's, like, little mini missions in the grand scheme of the game. Like, that is, I love doing stuff like that. Like, it help. I don't know why, but the ADHD task brain in me very much loves stuff like that. So that sounds very much...
Yeah.
And what's the, like, it's a good vibe, like the art is cool and everything.
The
I saw
art
the
is
pictures
really
you
cool.
posted on Twitter and I thought it was cool.
And those are what it looks like in game. Those aren't like faked screenshots. It looked, or at least I played it on the PlayStation 5 and it looked that good.
Okay.
Yeah, it has a really distinct 80s vibe to the art style. Characters are exaggerated. It's really, I think it's a really special little indie game, and I highly recommend
Hell
it.
yeah.
It took me about 5 hours to beat, so it's not that long. But I think my only real complaint about it is the fact that because it is very much like an escape room, like the kind of puzzles that you're doing are kind of escape room-ish puzzles, so that once you've figured them out, it's kind of like you know what the answer is. You know what I mean? So it's not...
Oh, okay.
Like, I can't see myself replaying this game unless I was an achievement hunter and wanted to, like, save everyone or kill everyone on a playthrough. The puzzles, once you figure it out, you're going to know what to do, and it's kind of moot. But it's a good experience for the 5 hours you're playing it. It does not overstay its welcome.
Okay.
I enjoyed it a lot.
And how much is it?
I don't actually know.
Do you know? Okay, cool. I was just curious if you knew. Sweet.
I'll look that up while we continue onward.
Cool.
Fever Dream of a Novel.
Yes. So as y'all have seen, I have been reading more recently, which has been very nice because I have not been reading, and I'm finally like kind of hitting my stride with being more consistent and getting things off my fucking to be read list, because good Lord, the stack of books I have on my bedside table is obscene, and I continue to buy more books instead of reading them. So I am making a much more concerted effort to like read the things I have before buying more books. I just need all of you to stop writing new shit that I really want to read. Fuckers. Said with love, because you are all very smart and creative. But this is a book that I was recommended on Book Talk, which I have fallen into. Yes, cliche, I don't care. I've gotten some cool book recommendations from it. This is Bunny, written by Mona Awad. Pardon me if I'm saying your name wrong. This is a book I've heard a bunch about, and I read it in one day. I have not read a book in one day in a very long time, and I read it while I was getting my nails done, and then I came home and had to finish it because I was so sucked into the world that Awad creates in this book. So the book takes place in this like prestigious New England college that has a very prestigious MFA program. And in this MFA program is our hero, Samantha, who is an outcast. And she's an outcast in her cohort because her cohort is made up of a group of girls who call themselves the Bunnies. And they are all very rich, young, attractive women. And they have seemed to like form some kind of weird cult. So in this book, Samantha is basically poor, quiet, but also like has that superiority complex that sometimes like bullied people get when they're like, well, I'm better. Like, and it's so it's about how she's kind of obsessed with these women, but also hates them. And then she's invited into their circle. And what happens is like her kind of integration into this strange, like, group of rich white women and kind of looking into their privilege. And it sounds like kind of cliche, but I cannot explain to you like the weird fever dream experience of reading this book. It's like reading, it's not necessarily stream of consciousness, but you're reading like, it's like Mean Girls, but with like weird cult stuff happening. And I don't want to spoil what they're doing, but there is some crazy shit going on that is very odd and cult-like and just absolutely bizarre. And it's just like, I don't want to spoil it because it's just one of those books that you like need to know as little as possible going into it. But it takes like that kind of dark academia vibe of like, oh, you're a loner in a program, and kind of gives us a character who is kind of annoying and like you kind of wish she would reduce the superiority complex, but then also kind of interrogates academia, racism in academia, classism in academia, while also having this really bizarre plot that involves there's 3 parts of the book. The second part is totally entirely as a collective with just using with a we pronoun. And it's really cool. And it's just like you really get into these characters' heads, and it's just like incredibly compelling in terms of what Awad is doing with the story.
And it's called Bunny?
Bunny, yeah.
I'm going to have to go add this to
It's just called Bunny. Yes. Yeah, I don't want to say too much else because...
Yeah, don't spoil it. Oh, and
but it's also queer. It's queer, too.
And it's a full-length book. Like, a lot of horror that we've been reading recently is like 100 and some odd pages, but this is...
Yeah. I've been reading a lot of novellas, but this is like a full-on, like, 300-page novel. So this is like a full... novel scenario.
Adding it to my list.
Yep, and that I read it in one day.
I mean, that's
granted. Partially because I was getting my nails done, I was getting a pedicure and a full acrylic set, but still, I could have stopped reading it and looked on my fucking phone, and I read it the whole time. Like, I couldn't stop reading it. I think my nail tech was like, "Who is this bitch?" But I was like, I cannot put this book down until you take my hands away from me. I will not stop reading this book. So, yeah, I've been doing a big deep dive into like weird girl literature, as it's called. Okay. And it's so fucking tailored to what I love, with like messy women and weird gore and fucked up shit. And it's going great. People can say that they will about book talk, but like I think I found my niche in book talk where I get all of like the really disturbing, weird recommendations.
That's the thing. Like, book talk it's the same thing as like a lot of people is like, oh, it's a book talk book, but like, I don't know. There's a lot of like, you have to find your kind of niche in there. And I do think that there are some that are just like, what's the most disturbing thing I've read? And it's something that's not at all disturbing, but like there are areas that you can find yourself in. Like, I found some good queer books out of book talk, and
and there's some really good creators who are just like actually trying to read like cool, interesting stuff. And a lot of the people I follow, it's like horror and disturbing books, but it's like I've gotten introduced to like more splatterpunk that way. And then, so I have found my niche of like cool alt girls who also look like they live in the woods, who are recommending like the most fucked up books you've ever read, and that's my favorite because I'm one of those girls, except I don't live in the woods. So
there is someone on Book Talk that I enjoy her posts. I think her name is Geneva Rose, and
I don't remember if that...
She wrote a book called The Perfect Marriage and You Shouldn't Have Come Here. And like,
oh, I know, I've heard of You Shouldn't Have Come Here.
She has like, her TikTok, a lot on her TikTok is she talks about this guy named Scott that decided he needed to email her and tell her how terrible he thought The Perfect Marriage was. And,
yes! Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And she talks in like this very deadpan voice, and I love her. I haven't read any of her books yet, but
I also love her. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, I think that there are some people who are reading some really cool stuff, and like, I have found some really awesome books through that, because Sometimes it's hard to just Google like good horror books.
really
I want
is.
like the really tailored to me shit. And if you put in the time of the TikTok algorithm, you will get very specifically tailored content to you.
You sure will. And there's one time where
And
you will talk about arachnophobia, and then all of a sudden TikTok is showing you a bunch of spiders. So TikTok algorithms, they're very specific.
they sure fucking are. So yeah, that's Bunny. So if you're looking for like a full length, it's horror. It's definitely horror. There's like body horror in it, and so this is very different. Taking a big swing, an epic sci-fi series.
So
Tell me more about it.
if you follow me on Twitter, you know that I hurt my shoulder. You know that I've been in a lot of pain and I'm dealing with numbness. And if you're watching this, you probably have seen me rubbing my two fingers, and this is why. It's not a nervous tick. I am just still numb in my hand. But this weekend, I had all these plans of like watching a bunch of festival films that I need to watch and do some reviews, but I couldn't. And I thought this is the perfect time for me to just sit down and watch something that I've been wanting to watch for a very long time. And I decided it was going to be the Apple TV series Foundation, which
Okay.
which is based on the Foundation series of novels by Isaac Asimov.
Ayn Rand. Oh, Ayn Rand. Am I insane? Jesus Christ. I hope... Just take me out. Just fucking take me out.
Ayn Rand.
I said that with such confidence, too. That's embarrassing. Anywho, I really did.
No, this is not about the... what was her philosophy? Objectivism? Was that what? I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Fountainhead, not Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
And Foundation... So I watched all 10 episodes of the first season because I couldn't stop watching. I was immediately hooked.
Oh.
The second season is starting in July, so now is a perfect time to get caught up if you have Apple TV, because this show is amazing. I was blown away at just how amazing it was.
Okay.
And for a story that seems incredibly unfilmable, because we're talking about Foundation is set over the course of hundreds of years. In the first episode alone, we are zapping back 400 years in the past. We are eventually going 136 years into the future, and then we're going to go 34 more years into the future. Like, this is like giant gaps of time. But the way that the show handles this is very fascinating, because it's about like this scientist, Harry Seldon, who's played by Jared Harris, who has this like...
Oh, I love him.
I do too. And he has this like theory, I cannot remember what the title is, even though it said so much. I think it's like psychohistory or something like that. And it's basically this idea of taking math and being able to plot out giant changes that are going to come. So it's not about like the small micro moments, but it is about like big 100-year, 500-year, 1,000-year type predictions of what's going to happen based on statistics and math and all this kind of funky shit. And he predicts that that the empire, which has been ruled for thousands of years, is going to come to an end in 500 years from now. And it's going to send the galaxy into a dark age that's going to last thousands upon thousands of years, unless they do something to change it, is what he's saying. And the emperor, and this is where it gets really interesting for me. The emperor is there's 4 emperors, but they're the same person, and they're clones of one emperor. So there's always going to be Emperor Dawn, Day, Dusk, and Darkness. And they are played by the same people all this time, because they are a direct clone from this one king that started 400 years ago. And he decided that we're just going to keep cloning myself, and that is how the empire is going to continue to survive. So at every one time, there's always going to be a young one, an adult one, a elderly person, and someone that is going to the great beyond. And they just keep moving in through this rows, and when someone dies, or if someone in a current generation dies, they have them on backup that they'll just pop them out, and they've been like inputting information into their brains this entire time while they're in some kind of like weird womb state, and they come out fully formed, knowing everything. So these are like people that have continued to exist, and their minds have continued to exist for like 400 years. And that's how they get around this idea of transitioning the plot through hundreds of year time, is because they're always going to be the same thing. So the bad guy is always going to be this dude played by Lee Pace, Terrence Mann, and someone else. They were always there. And then there's the good guys that are being attacked, and they end up getting Well, one, it's really kind of confusing, but I will say it makes more sense when you're watching it. It just sounds like a clusterfuck trying to explain it.
Okay.
But this show goes on over many decades. Characters will come out. There'll be new characters coming in, but there is this core
Okay.
kind of trio of like the Emperor and Harry Seldon, played by Jared Harris, and then a woman named Gal, who is played by Lou Lobel. It's so fascinating and it is so interesting, and I just like I
Huh.
don't it's this is grand television in the same way that people hold up like Game of Thrones in terms of the look, in terms of the feel of it. This is like epic,
Oh.
expensive. It's blowing away so much that I've seen on television recently that have been trying to meet kind of the scale of this. It is epic in a huge
Oh.
way, and I could not stop watching it.
Huh.
I watched all 10 episodes in a weekend.
Oh shit.
Yeah,
And what service is that
it's on
again?
Apple TV.
Damn, you are an Apple TV
I tell you what,
stan.
I am. They remind me of
They're
like
doing some good stuff though. They really are. Like
it reminds me of like of HBO Max when HBO Max was in like the golden years of like putting out prestige content.
yeah.
Like that is what I said content, prestige shows. That is what Apple feels like right now. And I think there's some really good stuff that not a lot of people are watching, which I don't know how they're continuing to fund Foundation because it looks fucking expensive. It
Really?
looks so good.
Okay.
And I love it. And I really highly recommend it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. I've like thought about it and I wasn't sure, but this now makes me want to do it.
Like just the simple idea of like the emperors just like really
That's really
it's
cool.
so fascinating, and it
That's
is so
really
well done,
cool.
and it makes perfect sense in the story. And it does at one point there might be some kind of genetic malfunction in the emperors and it's causing consternation among them, and there's interesting things that
Oh.
happen because of that. And I find the whole thing just so fascinating. I was blown away, and I've never read the books, but I was blown away by this adaptation.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have to watch it cuz it sounds incredibly fascinating
It really
and
is.
very much in like my deep lore kind of
Yeah,
interest.
I would say so, absolutely.
Hell yeah. Okay.
Swinging again, though, a coming-of-age ghost story.
So this is Charlotte Le Bon's new directorial debut, Falcon Lake,
Mm.
which is coming out. It should be in select theaters as of the publication of this post / this episode, and it's from Yellow Veil Pictures. It's this incredibly beautiful coming of age story, but it's also incredibly full of dread and melancholic, and it follows this young boy named Bastien, who is going to spend the summer with his family at a family friend's cabin in like Lake Country in Montreal, basically like rural cabin in the middle of nowhere, summer camp vibes,
Yeah.
basically. And when he gets there, he meets the family friend. Like he sees the family friend's older daughter, Chloe. She's 16. He's about to turn 14. And he's kind of like, he's starting to realize that girls are pretty.
Mm-hmm.
And they form this relationship. And she's also very fascinated by this urban legend of a young boy drowning in the lake. And she's kind of obsessed with death and kind of retelling the story of the boy in the lake via photographs. And so Karen Coleman called it like who is the founder of the Future of Film is Female and also a film programmer, and she said that this is like a beautiful slow burn summer film, and it is very much matches that vibe of like lazy summer days where you're a kid and you're kind of bored, but then you're also with your friends, and it's like the kind of bullshit that you get up to when you're a little bit bored and you don't have much to do around you, and the games you play and things like that. But it also is this like look at young teenage desire and obsessions with death, and there's just this air over it that feels like something is going to happen, and it's just like it's incredibly atmospheric. It's very slow. The score is beautiful. It's shot like it looks like it's from the 70s, but they have iPhones, so it like feels very, again, like that suspended in time and space vibe of like the lazy days of summer. So it like on the surface kind of looks like your kind of standard coming of age story, but as you watch it, you just get sucked in because something feels wrong. And it's in French. It's really good. It's got kind of Call Me by Your Name vibes in terms of like our protagonist. It's not queer. And there's a little bit, like, I don't know how we want to talk about age gaps. There isn't, like, an Armie Hammer Timothy thing, but she is 16 and he's 13. Right. So, like, there's some weird shit going on there, too. But, whatever. They're just, it has that same kind of vibe of summertime
when you were explaining the kind
love.
Of summertime love, the sort of, like, the slow burn summer feel. Like, I was immediately thinking of Call Me By Your Name when you were saying that, so.
Yes. It very much feels like that. Like, at first, and then it starts to differentiate itself, because I was like, oh god, is this gonna just play out like another kind of like a Call Me By Your Name ripoff without the queerness? But no, it really differentiates itself, especially at its end. And, like, yeah, not everyone's gonna like it, but I think it's like one of these sneaky, beautiful movies that if you like vibes and sad love in your horror, you will like this movie quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
So, Falcon Lake.
I was curious about that one, so I'm glad to hear it was good.
Yeah, I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
And it's in theaters right now? Is that what you said?
Yeah, select theaters, so, or it should, I believe it is. Please check that out. Like, woman-directed, cool, kind of plays with how to film desire from a male gaze perspective in an interesting way, I think, so. This kind of similar, maybe, vibes. A cute YA adaptation?
Yeah, so as part of my Frameline 47 queer film festival coverage, which for a lot of the stuff does not have embargoes, so I feel like I can talk about it, even though the festival hasn't.
You're like,
even though the festival hasn't started yet, but like I'm just gonna go with it because I think that because no one gave me any embargo dates, so here we go. Hopefully I don't get in trouble. Yeah. But this is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. And if you have never read a YA book before, that title is pretty much synonymous with almost any YA title, it feels like, anymore. They always have like these really big sounding titles. It feels sort of like YA books are continuing the trend of like emo pop songs titles from back in the day, but like these super.
I was going to say very, very Fall Out Boy.
Very Fall Out Boy, exactly. But this is a queer love story that's set in 1987 in El Paso, Texas. It is about two teenage Mexican-American loners as they kind of discover each other as friends and then sort of navigate some twisty road of self-discovery and being open about their queerness. And
ooh, okay.
It's a very my biggest complaint about it is that I feel like I've not read this is one YA queer book that I've not read, so I can't really compare it to what the book is.
Okay.
But I will say that if this feels like a Cliff Notes version of the book. Like there's a lot of gaps missing. Like I feel like it's, again, I've not read the book, so I can't, maybe this is exactly how the book is, but there's a couple parts where it feels like we're meant to follow both Dante and Aristotle, and we're mostly sticking with Aristotle because Dante moves away for a brief period of time. And so it's sort of like following Aristotle's, he goes by Ari, his journey of self-acceptance. Whereas I feel like we don't get to see enough of Dante because he's out of the picture. And I'm wondering if the book kind of delves into both a little bit more, because it feels...
So is it inspired by like the philosophers and the writer? Like, are they like young versions of that, or they just happen to have names?
They happen to have names. They're
okay.
One of them, his dad is like an English professor, and so named him Dante. And I don't remember exactly why Aristotle's name was Aristotle, but like it's just one of those cutesy YA novels, right? Where they're meant to be together because they're both named after, poets and stuff.
Yes.
And so like there's really no connection to the works of literature, at least in this adaptation, between the characters. They just have cute names because all YA characters must have ridiculously cute names. And so I feel like I do feel like the story kind of skips over a lot of development, because there's like some of the story is told through letters that Dante is sending to Ari while they're apart for like a year. And it goes from like kind of talking to each other to like Dante saying, "Would you masturbate? Who do you think of?" Like that is like, it's like a very sudden jump. And we don't get to see Dante all of a sudden.
Certainly a forward question.
It really is. And we don't really get to see Dante go from like this questioning to being bold enough to ask this question in a letter. And so there's like some things we're missing, but it is a really kind of cute story. It's telling a story that I don't think we see a whole lot because these are people of color. It is set in El Paso, a very conservative
Oh, okay.
time. They're both Mexican Americans. It kind of contrasts their two different family lives. And it just, I think that there's a lot of interesting things in here that I recommend it. It's just, I feel like I'm missing something. And I'm wondering if it's because the
Oh,
movie's trying to
okay. Yeah, yeah,
condense
yeah.
a full book into an hour and 30 minutes, you know? So, but it's really
Classic
cute.
adaptation
Yeah.
issues.
It's really cute though. And it was really nice to see white people going through queer self-acceptance. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Huh. I love that. Okay. Getting a lot of like adaptations of YA stuff recently. I guess people are starting to catch on that YA is very popular.
Yeah, and there's one that's coming out later this summer, I think, from Prime that I'm really excited for. Red, White, and Royal Blue. I talked about that novel, and that's coming out
Yeah.
as a Amazon adaptation. I think by the end of the summer, and I'm really excited for that too. So, bring me more YA queerness. Give it to me.
Hell yeah.
All right, and then finally, what is this love letter to Japanese TV?
Okay. So there is a genre of Japanese television called tokusatsu, which is basically where Power Rangers came from.
Okay.
It's like wild TV shows with lots of like special effects and monsters. So there's like Ultraman is one of them. There's a couple others I can't remember. The Toshoutsu channel from the Shout Factory has like plays all of these. But I had the distinct pleasure this week of being able to see a love letter to one of these shows called Kamen Rider. I got to see Shin Kamen Rider, directed by Hideaki Anno, who is the mad genius behind Neon Genesis Evangelion and 2016 Shin Godzilla. I love this man with all of my being. He is such a sad little weirdo, just an icon for us all. But he wrote Shin Ultraman, and now he is back with his next Shin movie, Kamen Rider. And I'm going to try to explain the plot of this movie to you, but a lot of it makes not a lot of sense. So that's fine. That's part of the joy of this. But basically, a man is made into an insect-human hybrid, and he is basically engineered by a scientist who regrets giving the insect hybrid creation technology to the world to fight the corporation who wants to use this for evil, which is basically bringing all of humanity together so everyone always experiences happiness. If you have seen Evangelion, it is basically human instrumentality, but a little bit with a different little flavor. So he is bringing there's Evangelion vibes all up in this. It is very fun. It is very goofy. There's a lot of exposition dumps about things called like prana and all this shit that like you can barely understand, and that's fine. It's not like this is the anniversary, the 50th anniversary of the show, and Hideaki Anno is a huge fan of it. So this is like a big kind of tribute to one of the shows that like kind of really shaped Japanese popular culture. And I'm like not super familiar with the original show. I've seen I think maybe 1 or 2 episodes, and Steve is a little bit familiar with it too. But it's like super bizarre. Like, and the cinematography is very handheld because it mimics the kind of like cheaper like 1980s aesthetic that the show had. So it's like really, really, really a love letter to the show. So I didn't appreciate that as much, but at first, but as like at the end credits, there's like kind of showing like the shots next to each other and how Anno created basically like shots from the original in the new one. And it's just like really cool to see like the respect and honor he gives this iconic show, but it also very much feels like a response to like superhero movies, because this is basically like crazy Japanese superheroes that are like overly sincere and like so cheesy and so like I will save the day, and it's like overly sentimental, and I don't know if he meant it this way, but it just felt like such a response to like the crazy confusion and sentimentality of Marvel. And while he is both like giving a love letter and an appreciation to Kamen Rider, it does also feel kind of like, oh, you want superheroes? Here's some crazy superhero shit. And it kind of like it almost feels like you're going to watch this and tell me it doesn't make sense, but you're going to watch like 20 Marvel movies and tell me it all makes sense. Like, and I kind of love that. And again, I don't know if he meant it that way, but it kind of felt that way. And I love that because it is like, it feels like these are what Marvel movies are. Crazy lore, weird ass relationships, everything doesn't make sense, and yet we all just buy into it.
Right.
So if you can buy into that, buy into Kamen Rider. I don't know if it's playing anywhere else in theaters. It was like kind of a one-night event, but I think it might be playing this weekend in some places. I'm not sure. Check your theaters, and then it'll come to digital soon. If you're like a tokusatsu fan and are familiar with it, please check it out. It's not as good as Shin Godzilla, but I liked it better than Shin Ultraman. I'm so excited for them. I want them to tackle a new project that is like Godzilla and that's more serious, because Ultraman and Kamen Rider are like, one, they're series of shows and they're very Monster of the Week shows, but also like they're silly because this tokusatsu is supposed to be kind of silly, campy, cheesy, and so it leans into that sensibility, while Shin Godzilla is more of like a horror movie and captures the ethos of the 1954 original. So I'm really hoping they get back to that, only because Anno like really nailed it with Shin Godzilla, and I just want like another one like that. But I still think they're doing amazing. It's just like, if you're not as familiar with the shows that those other two Shin movies are based on, they're going to be like, wait, this is so different from Godzilla. And it's like, yes, that's on purpose. Like, I promise you. But I had a lot of fun, and seeing it in a theater was cool.
Yeah, I bet. I always forget that the guy that did Shin Godzilla is the guy that did Evangelion. I always forget that until you bring it up again. I'm just like, what? So it's like, I always forget that.
Well, it's like all he worked on forever.
I know.
Like, he was like doing Evangelion, and then he was doing the movies and all this shit, and then he finally did like Shin Godzilla and like could work on like something else. And so it's cool that he's working on these other projects, and I'm really excited to see what they've been Ultraman and Kamen Rider pretty like back to back. So I'm hoping the new one, if they do another one, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
But yeah, it was really fun. There was a lot of nerds in that movie theater. People take this shit very seriously. Good lord.
I need to watch Shin Godzilla.
You still haven't seen it? Get on it. It's so good. Oh, it's so good.
It looks right up my alley.
Oh, it's the best Godzilla movie besides the 1954 version by a country mile. It's wild how good it is and how well Ono understood like the source material. And I think that's why I like these movies so much, is because like they really respect the source material and understand what made it so terrifying. That's Shin Kamen Rider. It's a good time.
Sweet.
Nerds abound. Well, so that about does it for this week's Little Cuts. But before we wrap up, Terry, who are we talking to on Monday?
Oh boy, we just finished recording with them, but we are chatting with the influencer movie director and co-writer Curtis David Harder and the film star Cassandra No. And Influencer is really good. We talked about it last week on Little Cuts. If you haven't watched it, it's out on Shudder. I highly recommend watching it and not reading anything about it, because it is a very twisty movie.
Yes.
And
we
don't talk spoilers too much, but there is one little thing that we do talk about. And I honestly think this is a movie that's best to go in without knowing anything. So
yes, I very much agree with that.
Homework this weekend, if you want to, is to watch Influencer on Shudder, because it's really, really good. But yeah, so we talk about that, and then they also brought with them, so Curtis brought Signs, which we'd already covered, so we just kind of briefly go over his story, and then Cassandra brought the Goosebumps episode, It Came From Beneath the Sink. So we talk about that as well.
Hell yeah. And we are still kind of just chugging along, playing catch up with everything else that we have to watch for festivals. So we're not starting another series yet, but we will soon.
Yep.
We're just busy and have a lot of movies to watch. So.
And I got Diablo 4.
Yeah. Yes, that's very true. Diablo 4. Respect. Listeners, you've heard from us. We want to hear from you. Did you watch, play, or read anything that we talked about this week and have
we
thoughts?
covered a lot of bases.
Do you have suggestions? I know, seriously. Do you have any suggestions for things we should be talking about? Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com or reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe. We had a couple additions to Patreon for our blah, blah, blah. We had a few new patrons sign up for us for Fresh Wounds, and we're really excited. Thank you for signing up for us. And we hope you enjoy June's offering of Inside.
Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there. But most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
have scratchers to scratch. There's a playful way you can do just that. Scratch with the key or acrylic nail. Scratch with the quill from a porcupine tail. Use a belt buckle from your friend Lamar. Or scratch with your pick while you play guitar. You can scratch in a bunch of different playful ways. Scratchers from the California Lottery. A little play can make your day.
Please play responsibly. Must be 18 years or older to purchase, play, or claim.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.